It's a pleasure to have back on the program Dr. Faheem Younus, who's a member of the executive body of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA and a senior fellow at the Hoffberger Center for Ethics at the University of Baltimore. It's great to have you back on. You know, we talked last week this story involving Pam Geller's group, which wanted to put some ads on New York City buses, which had different quotes attributed to Muslims. They also had advertisements with the phrase Hamas killing Jews, etc. And you actually debated Pam on the Sean Hannity program. What was your, talk to me about, I guess, so we understand your general view. What was your reaction to the desire to place these ads?
Thank you very much for having me, David. First of all, I think everybody knows, and that's what I wanted Pam Geller to know, that she does not speak for America. She does not speak for Jewish groups. She's simply a hate group. That's what the Southern Poverty Law Center has, and many others have described her as. She is not out as a champion of free speech. She's demonizing American Muslims. She's taking a cheap shot at Islam. And this is hate speech that incites violence. I was also trying to tell her, which I didn't get enough time to explain, of course, because I was getting interrupted 5 times in 30 seconds over there, that this is not just some rhetoric. You know, if you look at the Columbia professor, he was attacked. You look at those 6 people who were killed in the Sikh Gurdwara in Wisconsin. You look at these 3 young American students in Chapel Hill earlier this year. Muslims are being killed in this country because of Islamophobia, even Muslim lookalikes. So this kind of inflammatory speech, we know precisely what it will yield, and that's what the crux of my argument was.
Yeah, so let's see if we can kind of break down where we definitely agree and where maybe we have disagreements, and we'll explore that. I completely agree with you and the Southern Poverty Law Center that the American Freedom Defense Initiative, which is her group, is a hate group. I completely agree with you that her desire here is not merely to exercise free speech, but to make an attempt to demonize American Muslims based on what individuals in other countries have said. Now, to say that, let's get to the next point, which I think will be a more interesting one.
Yes.
Is quoting someone else hate speech if it is an accurate quote? Let's start there.
No, again, I don't think so. I think the only question you have to ask is, what is the consequence of that quote? John McCain, our presidential candidate, very famously with a smirk on his face, he said, bomb, bomb, bomb Iran. Imagine that quote with the US flag on an Iranian bus in Tehran. What would that do? I think it's just about the consequence. Again, I'm not against the law. I'm not saying that she should, by law, not be allowed. I'm not saying that the First Amendment should not allow that. But we as a society, the social code of our society, not the legal code, should at least stand up and say, this is nonsense. This is not free speech. Free speech comes with responsibility. Yeah, she has a right to be a bigot. We have a right to call her a bigot.
So I think that there's an interesting parallel here with what happened in Texas yesterday over the last couple of days with the contest for Mohammed cartoons, which, by the way, also had Pam Geller involved there. And we talked about this yesterday, and I got 2 types of feedback from my audience. My point of view was, of course, it should be legal to draw cartoons of Muhammad. Of course, cartoons of Muhammad should not bring people to violence. That, to me, is absolutely deplorable. However, should we also have a sort of pragmatic consideration when we are doing Muhammad cartoons? And I merely ask the question, if you're drawing Muhammad cartoons only to agitate others, should we consider that differently? Now, I would still not consider it hate speech, and I would still say that it doesn't matter from the point of view of doing violence. If the goal is to inflame, you still should not commit violence based on that, but it still asks this question of, is it responsible free speech if it's meant only to agitate?
So here's the position of Ahmadiyya Muslim community. We're not asking for legal changes. We're not asking that it's against the law. But I'll give you 3 examples. In America, if somebody wanted to mock the Holocaust, we will not give the media attention. We will simply ignore them. If somebody came out and started calling African Americans N-word, yes, that's their free speech, but we will not turn them into media darlings. Nobody will pay any attention to that person. That person will be called a bigot and a racist. If someone came and started making homophobic slurs against the LGBT community, our social code will scrap it, not our legal code. That is precisely what American Muslims are trying to say, that the Prophet's sanctity, his honor, is just as dear to us as those three examples would be to those three communities. We're not asking for any special treatment. Why doesn't America get it? We're not asking for legal change. We are just saying, look at your conscience. Forget about the Constitution. I'm appealing to the American conscience. This is racism. This is bigotry. We are better than that.
Sure, and I think that there's sort of second layer to this also that we could discuss, which is I got a bunch of emails from people after my commentary yesterday saying it might just be more pragmatic not to do this, because if the idea is to improve relations with the American Muslim community or Muslim communities around the world, this is certainly not going to help. And I was merely speaking from a pragmatic point of view. People emailed me and they said, David, here's what you're ignoring. If drawing a Muhammad cartoon is going to make someone go out and shoot a gun at somebody else, we actually should be exposing that. And it's an issue. So going at it from the angle that should be exposed to expose extremism. What do you think of that?
I think no, it's just there are 2 points. I think they're trying to expose a tender spot. There is no mystery there. They should come to me here in Baltimore and go to downtown and call an African American an N-word. They'll get a punch on their face. That's not exposing something. They already know this is a sensitive spot. Like the Pope said, if you make fun of my mother, you can expect a punch. Now, I'm not justifying the violence. I'm not justifying the killing. That is horrible. That is deplorable. Coming to the second point, yes, this is a battle for the hearts and minds of many, 99% peaceful Muslims. And we lose that battle when we support this kind of language. But I think there's a larger thing. The question is, what's in it for America? The bigger thing here for America is our own moral stature. We come across as hypocritical. We have made these accommodations for all other communities that I've just mentioned to you. But we are simply playing dumb to this idea somehow for the past 40 years that the sanctity, the honor of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a part of my faith. You know, you're really hitting me a very tender spot. That's all we're saying. We're not saying that it should be above criticism. Yes, you can have a dialogue. Ahmadiyya Muslim Community has called out Pam Geller multiple times. You know, the way you want to talk about it, let's come to a university and divvy up our times and have a moderator and debate it. Yes, that's very American, would love to do that. But Pam Geller was a nobody before 2010. She has no expertise in Islam. And today she's a media darling.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, obviously, I completely condemn Pam Geller. I think as someone who considers myself a supporter of Israel, nothing Pam Geller has ever done in the name of supporting Jews or Israel has even remotely resonated with me. But once we sort of get her out of the way, I think there's a very fair discussion to have as to whether there should be, let me put it a different way. There's a lot of Jesus cartoons that are done all the time, and we simply don't see the same types of isolated reactions. Does that make it more okay to do Jesus cartoons because we're not seeing that same reaction? I guess that's where I think people are getting caught up, which is are the cartoons different of Muhammad and Jesus, or is it the reaction that's different which should guide what we do?
Well, there are multiple layers to the question, and this is a fascinating conversation, by the way. My point again, David, is we hurt at different places. My hurt could be in my belly, and your hurt could be in your eye. That does not mean that we all hurt. Jesus, for all the reasons that a Christian will have to explain, may not be a tender spot for a Christian. I don't know. That's for them to answer. All I'm saying is, for me, the Prophet is a tender spot. So it cannot be, just because you don't hurt at the exact same place that I hurt does not invalidate or should not invalidate my hurt. And that's the precise thing. I'm a physician by profession. That's what I see every day. Patients hurt at different places. And it's the most insensitive thing for a physician to come and say, no, you don't have pain. And this is the thing. And some people will even argue that here is a different flip to it. Imagine a mob, a Muslim mob in your mind right now. Imagine on the streets of Afghanistan or Iraq, and imagine 10,000 people with beards extremely angry. You can imagine them burning an American flag. You can imagine them burning an effigy of an American president, but you can never imagine them burning Jesus Christ's effigy. Why? Because it has never happened. Why? Because in our faith, all prophets are dear and respectful. And even that angry mob will never say something blasphemous, horrific about Jesus, peace be upon him. That's our faith, and we are standing by that.
Very, very interesting conversation. We've been speaking with Dr. Faheem Younus, member of the executive body of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA and a senior fellow at the Hoffberger Center for Ethics at the University of Baltimore. Thank you again for being on.
Thank you very much, David.